Is it worth it? Whatever it is that you're pursuing right now in your life. I don't know what it is. What's your big goal? What's your big dream that you're pursuing right now? Whether it's because you want to write a book, maybe you want to start your own business, maybe you're thinking about making a career shift. You're in a career and you're thinking about going to another career. Or maybe there's a special someone that you have been pursuing, or there's just something that you've had this deep down desire of going after. And my question for you is it worth it? I mean, is it truly worth it? This thing that you really want to go after, is it going to be worth it for you? You say, Andy, well, why you ask me if it's worth it? The reason why I'm asking you that is because I personally believe that most people, unfortunately, fall short on their goals in their dreams because they begin to pursue a goal in a dream and they haven't established up front as to whether or not it's worth it. And so somewhere along the process, they get tested. Somewhere along the process, things become difficult. Somewhere along the process, they begin to second guess themselves. And somewhere along the process, they lose sight of the very reason why they're pursuing their goals and their dreams. And unfortunately, they give up. And I believe that that's why so many of us, unfortunately, don't realize our goals and our dreams because we haven't established upfront as to whether or not the dream or the goal is worth it. And so realize this, that you have to establish upfront if what you're going to, whatever it is that you're pursuing, if what it is that you're going to is going to be worth what you have to go through. I want you to write that down. You see, you've got to establish upfront if what it is that you're going to is going to be worth what it is that you have to go through. And trust me on this, and if you've been going after your goals and your dreams long enough, you understand that you are going to have to go through something. You're going to have to go through some disappointments. You're going to have to go through some people bailing out on you. You're going to have to go through losing some of the people who start off in the process with you, because I tell people this all the time. Those who start with you will not always finish with you. You're going to have to go through some people letting you down. You're going to have to go through some people not believing in your goals and your dreams. You're going to have to go through the fact that, you know what, some other people may not believe in what it is that you're pursuing, may not even believe that it's possible for you. And so there's a lot of things that you're going to have to go through, some disappointments, some failures, some obstacles, some setbacks. And so you've got to establish right now up front. And the question is whatever it is that you're going to, whatever it is that you're pursuing, will it in fact be worth whatever it is that you have to go through? And so I want you to think about something right now, something that you really are pursuing, something that you've been after, something that's been really on your mind, something that you think about late night when you're laying in your bed, you know, that thing that keeps you up at night. That thing that you've been wanting to pursue. Maybe you've been wanting to write a book. Maybe you've been wanting to start a business. Maybe you've been thinking about a career change. Maybe you know in your heart that you have a certain gift, a skill, and a talent, and you have this desire to try to use that gift, that skill, and that talent to go ahead and launch a new career. I don't know what that thing is for you, but I want you to think about what that thing is. What is it that you're currently pursuing right now? What is it that you're really going after? And then whenever you get that thing in your mind, you become very crystal clear on it, I want to ask you a very serious question. And the question is it worth it? Is it worth it? This journey that you're going to have to undertake, this journey that maybe perhaps you're on right now, that is nowhere close to being over. Is it worth it for you to go through whatever you have to go through to make this thing happen? And I think if you can establish that up front, then you'll be able to handle the trials that are going to come your way. If you can establish that up front, you'll be able to break through the barriers that are going to come your way. If you can establish that up front, that no matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, you can resolve within yourself that one way or another that you are in fact going to make it. And so some of you know, my wife, Dr. Cassandra Henriquez, and I, we do an event at the beginning of the year. And so at the beginning of the year, we have this annual event. It's called the Resolutions Retreat. And you know what? We were so excited and we were doing all this marketing. The event normally takes place during the month of January. And, we were looking at the registrations as they were coming in. And you know what? While we were looking at the registration, we saw that 2 people registered from Nigeria. And let me tell you something. I got to be honest with you. I was an absolute cynic. As soon as I saw that 2 people registered from Nigeria, and when we did a search in our databases and we realized that the people who registered were not in my wife's database, they were not in my database, let me tell you, I turned into a serious cynic. Listen, I was like, listen, that's a complete scam. It's a fraud. They registered for the event. I said, honey, don't wait. It's just a matter of time. They're going to be asking us to go ahead and refund them the money. They're going to be asking us to send them money orders in the mail, something crazy, right? We hear about all those scams that are happening a lot of times, unfortunately, from Nigeria. And so I remember, just sort of telling my wife that, and we were both sort of laughing about it. And then lo and behold, a couple weeks go by, and sure enough, we got an email from the people who quote unquote registered from Nigeria saying that one of them couldn't make it. So I was like, oh boy, here it is, honey. It's already falling apart. 2 people registered, but now one of them can't make it. And I was like, you know what? This is just complete sign of a fraud. I said, just wait for it. Wait for it. Don't worry, we're going to get an email real soon saying that, you know what, they want a refund. They want, they want some kind of cashier's check sent to them. I said, just wait for it. And then sure enough, another week goes by. Then we get a notification that the person is actually registered. They registered and actually registered for the hotel, the host hotel where we're having the event. And they sent us an email saying that they're going to be coming in and they want to know if we could send somebody to escort them from the hotel, from the airport to the hotel, because they have something called glaucoma, which really impairs their vision. And so I was telling my wife, I said, you know what, this is getting stranger and stranger. And listen, trust me, I told her, honey, listen, nobody has registered from Nigeria. This is a complete scam. Don't worry, they're going to ask for the money back. And so we get to the day of the event. And so, the event has started. And, we're starting to pour into people. We're getting into the content. We're creating this amazing experience. And then our assistant, Brenda, walks over to us. And Brenda comes over and we go, hey, Brenda, what's going on? And she says, listen, I just want to let you know that the person who registered from Nigeria, the person that we thought was a complete scam, well, that person is actually here. And me and my wife looked over at each other. We're like, what? And she was like, oh, yeah, by the way, you thought that it was a man. Actually, it's a woman. Her name is Delapo. She's an amazing woman. And so me and my wife, we looked over at each other. We're like, we can't believe this. And so we walk over now. We got like egg in the face. We can't believe this. This person really showed up. And then we meet this amazing woman with this extraordinary story. This woman who came all the way from Nigeria, who I believe caught a flight from Nigeria over to London, from London to New York, from New York to Florida, and she traveled over 23 hours in order to get to our event. And so I'm seeing this woman, and first of all, we are blown away by the fact that this woman has literally flown over 23 hours to come to an event. This is the same event that we have people who are here in our backyard who have made up excuses as to why they couldn't be here at the event. And here this woman is who flew over 23 hours to make it to the event. And then we're hearing from her. And how did she find out about the event? Well, she happened to be on YouTube, and she came across a video where me and my wife were doing an interview on Island TV. And she saw this video where we were talking about multiple streams of income. And then she went to our website, and then she made a decision that she was going to be there. And so when you look at that and you say to yourself, my goodness, what is it that has a person decide that they're going to come all the way from a different country, that they hadn't been receiving emails from us, did not know me, did not know my wife, all right, saw a video on YouTube and decide that she's going to book a flight and travel over 23 hours to come to an event where she knows absolutely nobody. And you say, well, what is it that can get somebody to do that kind of sacrifice, to get somebody to get that uncomfortable, to get somebody that's willing to take that type of a risk? And then you have people who literally have the opportunity to just get in their car and drive 10 minutes to get the event, and they don't even show up. So what is it? What is the difference? The difference is, for this woman, it was worth it. Yeah, that's right. It was absolutely worth it. You see, when we spoke to her, she told us she had some goals and some dreams. She wanted to make some things happen in Nigeria, and she wanted to be a voice of inspiration. And she was saying how many ways in Nigeria that a woman's voice oftentimes is not heard. She wanted to develop her voice, and she wanted to be a change maker, a difference maker. And she resolved within herself that it was worth it. She resolved within herself that it was worth getting on a flight over 23 hours to come to the event. She resolved within herself that it was worth it to go through whatever challenges she had to go through, even though she was traveling alone, and she had to deal with glaucoma, which she has difficulty actually seeing. And oh my goodness, did I forget to mention that she also uses a cane when she walks? What is it that make a person like that decide that they're willing to go ahead and get uncomfortable, to catch a flight for literally over 23 hours, to travel to places that they don't know people? What is it? And when you wonder what it is she is very clear to her that when it comes to her goals and her dreams, that when it comes to getting the information that she needs, when it comes to her personal growth, it is absolutely worth it. And because it was worth it for her, she was willing to do whatever it takes. Because it was worth it for her, she was willing to travel alone. Because it was worth it for her, she was willing to spend literally about 5 times what the average attendee spent to actually come to our program, because it was worth it for her. And so my question is for you, whatever it is that you're pursuing right now, whatever it is that you're going after, is it worth it for you? Is it worth it for you? Because trust and believe that there is going to be some sacrifices that you have to make. You are going to have to get uncomfortable. You're going to have to literally get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You're going to have to step outside of your comfort zone. You're going to have to do some things that perhaps other people won't do so that you can have the things tomorrow that others won't have. Les Brown said that. And so I want you to be thinking about right now, what is that thing for you right now that you're pursuing, that thing that you're going after? And I want you to be honest with yourself. And I simply want to ask you the question, is it worth it? Is it worth it for you to get uncomfortable? Is it worth it for you to hear no after no after no? Is it worth it for you to keep pushing forward, even if you're not seeing the type of results that you want? Is it worth it for you to lean in when every part of you wants to go ahead and call in a corner and cry yourself to sleep? Is it worth it for you to keep moving forward even when you're trying to figure out how you're going to be able to manage and pay your bills? Is it worth it? And that's the question that you need to be able to answer. That's the question that only you can answer. You see, only you know whether it's worth it. Only you know whether or not you're willing to pay the price. Only you know whether or not the thing that you're going to, if it's worth the things that you're going to have to go through. I'm going to say that one more time. Only you know whether or not the thing that you're going to, if it is worth the things that you're going to have to go through. Is it worth the pain that you're going to have to endure? Is it worth the late nights? Is it worth the frustration? Is it worth the disappointment? Is it worth the judgment? Is it worth the criticism? Is it worth other people counting you out? Is it worth it? I want you to think about that right now. I want you to think about your goals. I want you to think about your dreams. And I really want you to ask yourself the question, is it worth it for you? And so I asked you that question because, I sort of reflect back on the story. This is many years ago, probably close to close to 15 years ago. I was involved in a direct sales company business. And I remember I was, became friends with another gentleman that had gotten into business probably about a year or so before I got into business. And so we used to have these business opportunity meetings at a local hotel about once a week. And so we had just wrapped up one of these business opportunity meetings. And so oftentimes when we were done with those meetings, we would just stand around and talk in the parking lot. And so we would just chit chat in the parking lot. So I'll never forget, it was just, regular. The meeting ended and we went out in the parking lot and we sat down and we got in the car. And I'll never forget this. We put in a Jim Rohn CD. And for those of you who don't know Jim Rohn has since passed away. But this is one of the greatest thought leaders, one of the best. I wouldn't even call him a motivational speaker per se, but just a wonderful thought leader. It was Jim Rohn who said that you got to learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. It was Jim Rohn that says that we must all suffer from one of two disciplines in life, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. But he said the difference is discipline weighs ounces, but regret weighs tons. It was Jim Rohn that said that success is a few simple disciplines exercised every single day. I mean, I can hear the Jim Rohn quote after quote after quote. Jim Rohn said that when the end comes for you, let it find you conquering a new mountain and not sliding down an old slippery slope. I mean, I used to listen to some Jim Rohn. And so we were sitting there in the car and we were listening to Jim Rohn and we were having a conversation. And I'll never forget this. My friend looked over at me and he was saying, Andy, he said, man, Andy, he said, man, you don't understand, man, this has to work for me. He says, man, this has to work. He said, you don't understand, man. I don't have a college education. I don't have a career. He says, this has to work for me. My best friend right now is in prison, Andy. This has to work for me. And he says that he says, man, if we continue to do the things that we got to do, man, he said, listen, we're going to make our mark in this industry. He said, if we continue to do the things that we got to do, man, one day people are going to read about us in the magazine. And he says, man, I know we're going to make this thing happen. And so I remember sitting in the car with him and I'm listening to him say that people are going to read about us in the magazine. I'm listening to him saying that we're going to make our mark in the industry. And I remember sitting there and agreeing with him, but deep down inside, let me be honest with you, deep down inside, that hunger wasn't there necessarily for me. Why? Because at the time, I was still working an amazing job with PricewaterhouseCoopers. At the time, I was still getting a paycheck that was hitting my bank account. every 2 weeks. At the time, I had not only did I have an undergraduate degree, I had a master's degree, and I had a CPA license. So the way my situation was looking and the way his situation was looking was extremely different. And so I remember the look on his face. I remember when he was saying this, and I remember myself agreeing. And let me just tell you something. I got to be honest with you. I'll never forget this. It was probably about 11 years later. And needless to say, at that point, I had sort of left that company and continued and went on my path that you see me on right now of developing this voice that you're hearing right now. And to be honest with you, my friend too, he would also leave that company, but he did not leave the industry. He left that company, but he didn't leave the industry. And I'll never forget this. I was at an event and somebody saw me speak and they came up to me. They said, Mr. Henriquez, listen, you are a great speaker, man. And he says, I'm a part of a business opportunity. And let me tell you, somebody like you, I mean, the way that you speak, your ability to connect with people, the amount of people that you know and the way that you influence people. He said, listen, I think you would be amazing at this company that I'm a part of. And I know that you're extremely busy, sir, but so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I just want to leave you with this magazine. And I want to call you in a couple of weeks so I could just sort of check in and see if you had an opportunity to go through the magazine. And he says, sir, I've already earmarked some of the pages in the magazine that highlight some of the top leaders in our organization. And so I remember going home, and I remember this. I threw the magazine down on the counter. I did not open the magazine. I did not look in there at all. And so I remember about 1 or 2 weeks went by, and I remember just seeing the magazine sitting there. And so I decided to pick up the magazine, and I started flipping through the pages. And sure enough, I saw the page that the guy folded, and I read one of the first stories about one of the leaders in the industry. I said, you know what? That was a pretty cool, inspiring story about one of their top producers. And then I flipped back to the next part that he bent. And when I opened it up, sure enough, guess who I see? It's my friend. And literally, this is literally maybe about 11 years later. I don't know. I mean, this is over a decade later. And I'm looking and I see a full page spread on my friend. That's talking about how he hit the highest position in the company. That's talking about how he went from being broke to now he's making, 6 figures or 5-figure checks per month. And that's talking about how the company has awarded him a Bentley because of the position that he's hit in the company. That's talking about all the amazing things he's accomplished. And as I'm looking at this, I can't help but think back to a decade before that, where my friend was struggling, when he was trying to build this business. And he was sitting there in the car with me and saying to himself, one day, man, we're going to make our mark in this industry. One day people are going to read about us in the magazine. And so when I look back at that moment, I think about what was the difference between him and I in the moment when we were sitting in that car. You see, the difference is, for me, it wasn't really worth it. You see, for me, there wasn't a sense of urgency. You see, for me, it wasn't do or die. It was just something that I was doing. It just was creating an additional stream of income. It was exciting. It was social in many ways. You see, but for my friend who didn't have a college degree, for my friend who considered all his other options and literally made up his mind that was going to be the only way that he was going to be able to create an income for himself. And so Lewis Pugh has a quote, and here's what he said. He said, there's nothing more powerful than a made up mind. And so my friend, in that moment, he made up his mind up front that it was worth it. And so, you know what, when I heard the expression before, they said next time you ever sit down and you order yourself, you decide to have some eggs and ham. And they say to you that when you look at your plate, they say that when you look at your plate, you look at the egg and you say the chicken was involved because the chicken had to simply lay the egg. But they say when you look at the ham was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. The ham had to give up its life in order to be there on that plate. And when I think back of my friend, you see, he decided that whatever he had to do, no matter how difficult it got, regardless of the fact that he was going to have to leave and go to another company, regardless of the fact that he would have to build his organization and watch it fall apart as people who are in his downline decide to quit the business, as people would get out of the business, as people would turn their backs, as people would say, hey, why are you in that business? It's a Ponzi scheme. Why are you in that business? That's one of those pyramid things that he had made up his mind up front that it was absolutely worth it. And because he made up his mind up front that it was worth it, he was willing and able to endure a decade worth of work, a decade worth of putting in the time, the effort, the energy of going through the no's, of going through the disappointments to get to where he's at right now. And so my question is for you, when you think about your goals and your dreams and you think about whatever it is that you're working on right now, my question for you is, can you declare right now up front that it's absolutely worth it? Can you say with all honesty that it's worth it for you right now? That this thing that you're pursuing, this thing that you're going to be going after, can you say right now in this moment that it's worth it? That can you say that whatever it is that you're going to is absolutely worth what it is that you're going to have to go through? I'm going to say that one more time. Can you say right now, without a second of a doubt, can you say with a 100% conviction that what it is that you are pursuing right now, that it is absolutely worth it? Whatever it is that you're going to is 100% worth what it is that you're going to have to go through. And so I believe that if you can say that up front, if you can establish that up front, then what happens is you can position yourself entirely different. You can separate yourself from those people who are seriously not serious. You can separate yourself from those people who are just simply making excuses. You can separate yourself from those people who are just simply going through the motion. So I want you to think about right now what it is that you're pursuing right now, whatever it is that has your name on it, this thing that you've been going after with all your effort, all your energy, that thing that keeps you up at night, that thing that you love to talk about, that thing that gets you excited, that thing that you know that is literally your calling. I want you to think about what that thing is, and then I want you to be very honest with yourself, and I want you to simply answer the question, and the question is it worth it? Is it worth it for you? And here's the second question I want you to think about. If you're still trying to figure out if it's worth it or not, here's what I want you to think about. The first question I want you to consider is, what will happen? What will happen in your life if you actually accomplish this thing? What would happen? What would your life look like if you were to actually make this thing happen? What would your life look like if you were to actually start and be able to build and grow this business? What would your life look like if you can maintain the course and continue to keep the main thing, and continue to plow forward in this goal, this dream, and this vision that you have? What would your life look like if you didn't let the next no derail you from your goals and your dreams? If you didn't concern yourself with the fact that other people that told you that they were in it with you, other people who told you that they were going to have your back, if those people flaked on you, what would your life look like if you just continued to push forward, and if ultimately you made this thing happen? I want you to just think about that for a moment. I want you to think about what your life would look like. Now, once you're done envisioning what your life would look like, if you in fact made this thing happen, if you in fact were able to pull this thing off, I want you now to look at the other perspective. I want you to look at it from a different angle. And it was Wayne Dyer that says, if you change the way you look at things, then the things you look at change. And so I want you to switch your perspective for a moment. And so my other question is, what would happen if you didn't make this thing happen? Well, what would happen if you didn't write the book? What would happen if you didn't develop your voice? What would happen if you didn't start the business? What would happen if you didn't make the transition to the job that you wanted? What would happen if you didn't decide to go after this person that you believe, the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with? What would happen if you decide to give up and forfeit on your goals and your dreams? What would happen if you died with your dreams still in you? What would happen if you had to look back on your life and say, oh my gosh, unfortunately, things didn't work out? What would happen? Somebody said that 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed. Mark Twain said this: 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do versus things that you did do. And it was Jim Rohn, as I told you, that said we must all suffer from one of two pains in life: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The regret of, what if I would have written a book? What if I would have started a business? What if I would have pursued my goals and my dreams? What if I would have decided to stick to it? What if I would have kept the main thing? What if I didn't let that person talk me out of it? What if I didn't allow other people's opinions of me dictate what my reality was going to be? What if I decided to just stick to this thing? What if? And so my question for you is, what would it look like for you if for some reason you decided not to move forward on your goals and your dreams? You decided not to make this thing happen. And when you think about what your life would look like, when you think about what that pain would be, my question is, could you live with that? Could you live with knowing that that you had a book in you that you didn't write? Could you live with the fact that you continue to go to a job in which you were sick and tired of being sick and tired, a job in which they were paying you just enough so that you wouldn't quit, and you were literally delivering just enough of time and effort and energy so they wouldn't lay you off? Could you live with the fact that no one would ever hear this amazing voice that you have? Could you live with the fact that your business wouldn't impact the lives? Could you live with the fact that the impact that you could have made is not made? Could you live with it? And if you know in your heart that you wouldn't be able to live with it, if you know that the grief would be too much to bear, if you know that it would weigh you down, if you know that you would look back at your life and have deep, deep regret, then my thing is for you, then you need to declare in this moment right now that it's absolutely worth it. And once you make the decision that it's worth it, you've got to be willing to push the excuses to the side. Once you make the decision that it's worth it, you've got to keep the main thing the main thing. Once you make the decision that it's worth it, then you've got to be willing to push through the pain. Once you make the decision that it's worth it, you've got to understand that every once in a while, some things are going to happen around you and some things are going to happen to you. But ultimately, the only things that matter are the things that happen in you. That's what Elsie Robinson said, that you've got to understand that once you make the decision that it's worth it, the obstacles don't matter. The circumstances don't matter. The only thing that matters is that you have made the decision up front that it's worth it. And so the rest is so it is. The rest is you just have to go through it. The rest is this is what you have subscribed to. The rest is, hey, this is just what I've got to go through because it's done, Andy. It is done. The book is done. I've got to write it down. I've got to make the thing happen, but I'm declaring up front that it's worth it, so it's done. The business is done, Andy. Why? Because I'm declaring up front that it's worth it, and that is going to get done. And so you've established right now, you're saying, Andy, this gift, this skill, this talent that I've been sitting on, it is done. I'm going to bring it to the marketplace. I'm going to impact lives. And you say, well, how do I know that? Why? Because you're establishing up front that it's worth it. And once it is worth it, you can endure the pain. Once it's worth it, you can push through whatever you're going through. Once it's worth it, then the odds don't matter. That's what Dexter Yeager said. When the dream is big enough, then the odds don't matter. And so my question for you is it worth it? This goal, this dream, this thing that you have, is it worth it for you? And so if it is worth it, and I believe it's worth it, I believe this goal, this dream, this thing that you have, that you wouldn't even be listening to this message right now if there wasn't a part of you that knows that this dream was worth it. You would have stopped listening to this message a long time ago. But there's a part of you that knows that your dream, your goal, that it's worth it. And because you know that it's worth it, and what I'm saying is, then let's just do the work. Let's do what's required to make this thing happen. And so this, every once in a while, you've got to have a gut check. You know, Socrates said that an unexamined life is not worth living. And so we've got to examine our lives. We've got to ask ourselves some questions, sometimes difficult questions. And one of those questions is it worth it? Is it worth it? I want you to think about that when it comes to your goals and your dreams. And if it is absolutely worth it, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, it's time for you to do the work. It's time for you to show up. You know, this wouldn't be Andy Henriquez if I didn't end by telling you this. Show up for your lives, ladies and gentlemen, because if you don't, nobody else will. All right. Well, that's what I'm talking about. Well, let me just tell you, I am excited. I'm so happy that all of you chose to join us on the Show Up for Your Life Motivational Movement. And so, as you know, we are still going to stick around. And so let me just explain a couple of things to you. First of all, if you're listening into this message and somehow you and I, we're not, officially connected, and you're not part of my tribe, and you're not receiving my motivational videos and messages on a weekly basis, I want you right now to go ahead and open up your web browser and go to showupforyourlife.com. And when you go to showupforyourlife.com, you're going to simply put in your name and your email address. Put in your name and your email address. That's going to allow me to send you an instant motivational message, and it's going to allow me to continue to send you motivational messages, send you content and information I believe is going to help you to show up in your personal life as well as show up in your business. So make sure you do that. Go to showupforyourlife.com and put in your name and your email address. Also, just so you know, we have a private Facebook group, a very private Facebook group that allows you to post your comments and your feedback and allows you to go ahead and communicate with the Show Up for Your Life community. And so once again, open up a separate internet web browser and type in showupgroup.com. That is going to be the shortcut to take you to our private group. So go ahead and open up a separate browser, type in showupgroup.com. When you type in showupgroup.com, that is going to direct you to our private group. And when you get there, go ahead and send us a request to join the group, and we'll be more than happy to go ahead and have you join our group. Also, if you have any comments or feedback after listening to this message, or if you're listening right now live, of course, go ahead and put your comments and your feedback in the Show Up group, showupgroup.com.